Welcome back to Solo Marvel Champion. This is my review of the Next Evolution campaign. I have played this 20 times now, and if you think that sounds crazy, you're probably right. I do enjoy this campaign quite a bit, and I do plan to play it with all the heroes. I just don't know if that will actually end up happening. I do have a few things to say really quickly. Number one, I mainly play True Solo and Standard, so that is the perspective I bring to these reviews. Number two, there are going to be spoilers in here. If you haven't played it for yourself and want to be surprised, click away now and go watch this video after you've played it yourself. Number three, I did make a few minor changes to my spreadsheet for scoring scenarios. Now I have this blind column. This is my 1 out of 5 ranking of how difficult I think a scenario is on a blind play. And then this repeat column is just the modifier I give it after you know what you're doing in the scenario. Also, I am going to talk about strategy as I did in my Mutant Genesis video, but I am going to put that in the discussion with the individual scenarios rather than putting that all the way at the end. So that is going to be a little bit different than how I did the review for Mutant Genesis. Alright, with that out of the way, let's take a look at the campaign structure in Next Evolution. I do want to shout out to Hall of Heroes. All of these images are coming from Hall of Heroes just to save me some time in the back end. In this campaign, at the beginning of every scenario, you choose a player side scheme which hasn't been chosen yet in the campaign, and you put it into play. Now these all follow the same mold. They have 4 threat, they don't count towards your player side scheme limit, and when defeated, they put an environment into play. As a general strategy, I'm going to say I like to play a hero with 2 thwart, just because these have 4 on it. A thwart of 2 or higher is going to make clearing these really easy, especially once you get Hope Summers, who we'll talk about a little bit later. Another strategic thing is this is one of 2 that I like to get first and second in my campaign, depending on the hero I'm using. So this particular one, when defeated, it flips into Team Assembled. This one comes with a counter. You can remove that counter at any time to search your deck or discard pile for an ally with printed cost 3 or less and put it into play. That put it into play is important. That bypasses play requirements. So in my Black Panther deck, I played Gamora, and I never actually played her. I put her into play, so it didn't matter that I wasn't a Guardian. This is a really powerful effect, either with your signature ally, as I did in X-23, or an ally you put into the deck, as I did in Black Panther. Establish Safe House gives you the Safe House established environment. You can remove the counter to put a Safe House into play. Safe House is a really good card. It costs 4. So if it gets discarded or returned to my hand, I never replay it. But while it's on the table, that 4 does matter in a few situations. It has an alter ego action, choose heal 2 from your identity or draw a card, and it doesn't exhaust because any player can do this. Now I don't play Expert, but this heal 2 damage from your identity can be important in Expert, because damage carries over between scenarios when you're playing Expert. So you might take this one early and say, I don't care about, ending a scenario with 2 or 3 damage because I get to heal 2 right away at the beginning of the next scenario when I have my Safe House. Always an option. Of course, draw 1 card is always powerful as well. Gear Up earns you the Geared Up environment. Remove a counter. Remove the counter, and everyone's going to shuffle a Pouches into their deck. Pouches is a 2 wild resource, and I like it, but I don't usually pop this counter right away like I do with some of the others. With Pouches, since this gets shuffled in, I like to wait until my deck is a little bit thinner and shuffle it in to a thin deck. That way I'm going to see it when I feel like it's going to be the most impactful. Mission Prep is the other one that I almost always go for right away. It gives you the mission prepped environment. This is similar to Assemble the Team, or Team Assembled rather. Remove the counter, search deck and discard pile for an upgrade which costs 2 or less, put it into play. Again, that bypasses requirements. I used the Sorcerer Supreme in my Spectrum deck because I didn't care that I couldn't play it, because this puts it into play. So some real good strategy and some real power in these environments, Mission Prepped and Team Assembled. That is why I go for those first. Practice Maneuvers is good if you are playing a lot of events which cost 3 or more. This environment reduces those 3 or more cost events by 1. That is powerful if you have a lot of those events. And there comes a point in Stryfe, the final scenario, where everything costs 1 more. So if you have this, those 3 cost events now just cost 3 again. So it is a way to offset some of that comes in Stryfe. Prepared Defenses is another really good one that I like. It earns you the Prepared Defenses environment. Each hero gets +1 defense and retaliate 1. Black Panther liked this because that got him up to 3 defense and retaliate 2. X-23 liked that. It got her up to 3 defense, retaliate 1, and if I had my Adamantium Lacing in play, she also had retaliate 2. So this can be really powerful. All of these are good. It just depends on what hero you're playing and what they want to be doing, what you want to be doing with your hero. Now, all of these come with a cost. You choose the player side scheme and you shuffle the associated encounter card into the encounter deck. And these are going to follow you through the campaign whether or not you clear these side schemes and earn these environments. So, for example, if you choose Practice Maneuvers, you get Lady Mastermind. If you choose Assemble the Team, you get Malice. Lady Mastermind, 1/1/3, all of these are going to have Surge. Every one of these 6 cards has Surge, and generally some ability. Malice is one I especially dislike because when she's defeated, she takes over an ally. So you have to be a little strategic if she comes into play. For the most part, I'm just going to soak those attacks of 1 unless I have Retaliate, because that is going to defeat Malice and she will take over an ally. Of course, if you have no allies in play or you only have Hope Summers in play, this ability fizzles. So just keep that in mind. Scrambler, discard an upgrade you control. Vanisher, return the support with the highest cost to your hand. This is Safe House. He's the one who comes in with established Safe House. Under Pressure isn't terrible. An Amplify icon is about the easiest thing to deal with. And 6 Threat isn't really a big deal, especially if you've got a hero with a 2 or more thwart. Hope is going to match that, so this is pretty easy to get rid of despite having 6 in this campaign, basically because of Hope. And Overburdened is the one that comes in with pouches. Choose to either discard a resource or take 2 damage. So I do like that there is a little bit of push-pull. Yes, I want Team Assembled, but it comes with an encounter card I really dislike. Yes, I definitely want Mission Prep, but Mission Prep comes with Scrambler. So you are making a choice not only on the good, but also the bad. And while I have never chosen one based on the encounter card, you do have to keep in mind what encounter card you are putting into the deck for the remainder of the campaign. So that is how the campaign structure works in Next Evolution. I really enjoy it, number 1, because you get a choice. And number 2, it really helps your decks do what they want to do. It adds a ton of consistency. And for me, that's a lot of fun, and one of the reasons I've played this campaign so many times. Alright, now let's take a look at the individual scenarios in Next Evolution. The first one is Morlock Siege. I do give this scenario a blind difficulty of 3 out of 5 for a number of reasons. The first is you have 7 Marauder villains, and you're going to see 3 of them at random. You do have to defeat all 3 to win the scenario. Defeating 3 isn't the difficulty because they generally have fewer hit points than most villains. The difficulty comes in this routed environment. When you defeat one of these villains, the next one up is going to make an immediate activation against you. So from a strategic point of view, if I don't have someone who can block that next attack, or I'm not willing to take that next attack, there are a lot of times when I'm going to let that villain sit at 1 or 2 hit points and just wait until the next turn for the push when I have someone that can block for me, or when I don't care about that attack. Next, there are these knock counters which are going to go onto the main scheme, and on a blind run that looks intimidating because there's no way to remove those knock counters. But if you've played the scenario before or have read ahead, you know that you want those knock counters to go on. If that scheme advances because of knock counters, when the Morlocks come out, they are going to have tough status cards. If this advanced by threat instead, it is going to, or they are going to come out without those tough status cards, which makes it a little more difficult. Another thing is, those Morlocks are going to be what the villains are attacking. So now you're faced with a situation where you have to defend those Morlocks, or they're going to take damage and be defeated. But if they have come out with tough, those are 2 attacks you don't even have to worry about, because those attacks are just going to go run into those tough statuses and no damage is going to be dealt. I am going to give this a -2 for repeat difficulty. This is one of those where if you understand that you want the knock counters to go on, just keep threat off of the main so that happens, and then those Morlocks come out with tough. Also, you want to keep these Morlocks safe. If both of them leave play, and I'm saying this from a true solo where I'm always going to get exactly 2 Morlocks. For everyone you save, you're going to get to add a card to your hand in the next scenario before you draw up to hand size. So you're going to start the next scenario if you've saved both of them with 2 cards and then draw up to your hand size. If all of them are defeated, you lose the scenario. So this really just comes down to knowing that you want the knock counters to go on and you want to save those Morlocks. Saving those Morlocks makes the next scenario a lot easier. Having those Morlocks come out with tough makes this scenario a lot easier. Finally, I do want to talk about one of these Marauders. Grey Crow really sucks. I don't want to see him in this or the next scenario, but if I do, I want to see him as the first villain in this scenario so that I can defeat him before I get a lot of expensive cards in play. I do give this scenario a 3 for fun. Most of the multi-villain scenarios are a lot of fun for me just because of variability. You don't know exactly what the villain is going to be doing to you when you sit down to play. Single villain scenarios, that is not the case. You know exactly what's going to happen in those scenarios. So I do think it's a lot of fun to get some randomness that doesn't allow you to know exactly what to expect on that first turn. So that is Morlock Siege. Blind difficulty of 3. Final difficulty of 1, just because once you understand what this scenario is doing, it is pretty easy to defeat it without any problems. On the Run is the second scenario in Next Evolution. I am going to give it another blind difficulty of 3 out of 5. The difficulty here, again, is going to come with which villain you end up facing. You have 4 Marauders left, and you're going to see one of them at random. The one you get could be really detrimental to your game. So that's difficult. Number 2, we have to look at this Hope's Captor attachment. It has 2 abilities, 2 forced interrupts. Number 1, when the villain would attack you if a Marauder minion is engaged with you, the villain schemes instead. There is going to be a Marauder minion engaged with you that comes in with the main scheme. Furthermore, the campaign is going to put a tough status on that minion and on the villain. So you have to get through that minion just so that he's going to attack and not scheme. It is crazy to say you would rather take the attack than the scheme because this has a threshold of 8. So if this main scheme pops, you are going to lose the game. So there is some difficulty there. I think, though, I am going to give it a -2 difficulty, primarily because, I mean, if you know going into it, the priority is keeping those minions off the board, I think you are going to have an easier time with it. Another thing that makes it a little bit easier is, going into this scenario, you should have, number one, earned a campaign environment, which is going to help you out. Number two, you should have rescued those Morlocks in the previous scenario, which means you're going to get to choose 2 cards from your deck to put into your opening hand before drawing up to hand size. So, knowing that you want to get rid of these minions, go fetch some cards into your hand that are going to help you do that. That's going to make the first turn easy, and if you can get rid of the first one and just deal with the next ones as they come out, it is going to be a lot easier for you. Now, you also have to be aware of the push in this scenario. Once you would defeat the villain, you have to reset their hit points and then flip Hope's Captor to the desperate side. Now the villain gets +6 hit points. You advance to 2A. 2A and 2B are going to put another Marauder minion into play and give that minion and the villain another tough status. Further, those minions, all Marauder minions, also now have guard. So that does make it a little more difficult, but again, knowing that this is going to happen and preparing for it, there are several times in my 20 plays of this campaign where I don't push the villain because I'm not yet ready to deal with that Marauder tough guard minion. If you know what's going to happen, if you know what's coming in the future, slow down a little bit, make sure you can deal with that minion when you do the push. And this scenario is really not that difficult. Now, as far as fun goes, I'm going to just give this a fun rating of 2. Difficulty doesn't factor into fun. But what can happen in this scenario is you get a villain that is really difficult for your hero, and it's difficult to deal with the Marauder minions and the villain in a consistent way. And that really makes it a slog. I don't mind a difficult scenario, but I really dislike a scenario that turns into a slog. So for that reason, I'm only going to give this one a fun factor of 2. That's scenario number 2, On the Run. Next, we're going to look at Juggernaut. Juggernaut is the first villain in this box who I really give a 4 out of 5 difficulty to on a blind playthrough. He is going to start with 1 momentum counter and his helmet on the armor side. That armor gives him Stalwart and Overkill, which are really bad, especially since when you get to campaign setup, if you have earned 2 environments, that's going to add 2 more momentum onto Juggernaut. So now he's hitting for a lot with Overkill. Furthermore, he's going to come with Black Tom Cassidy or Creeping Willow as a face-down encounter card during campaign setup. If that's Black Tom, when he's revealed, he's going to go fetch a Creeping Willow. So no matter which one it is, on turn 2, you're going to have to deal with a Creeping Willow. When Creeping Willow hits you and damages you, you are stunned. So that is a actually really good setup. I like that. It gives you a lot to think about, but it's also pretty difficult. On top of all of that, his main scheme doesn't defeat you if it advances. It just makes him attack, which might defeat you. And that attack happens even if you're an alter ego. So Juggernaut in a blind run is really difficult. Of course, I do give him a -3 in difficulty, because there's really no secret how to have a good time against Juggernaut. You really just need to expose him. I've talked in all of my Juggernaut videos about what I call mulligan priority. When I'm playing Juggernaut, when I do my mulligan, I don't look for the best cards I can find. I just ensure I have the resources to expose him. Once he's exposed, number one, he's going to lose all of those momentum counters, and his helmet flips to the exposed side. He takes 1 additional damage from each card with a printed resource, and by the way, they're also going to get Hope Summers, who just happens to have a mental resource. Big thing here is, obviously, he loses Overkill, he loses Stalwart, so now you can confuse and stun him, and he is much, much easier when he's exposed. Hope makes this scenario a lot easier as well. So really, there's only 2 things you need to concern yourself with in this scenario. Prioritize exposing him, because that can flip back, and it will flip back when you push him. So prioritize exposing him, and just like on the run, I always look and see where I'm at if I want to do the push. If I'm going to be able to push him, but don't have the resources to expose him again right away, I wait a little bit on that push. I want to be able to expose him as soon as that helmet flips. You also have to worry about that Creeping Willow that comes in. Stunning you is no fun, so just be aware you are going to get a Creeping Willow when you're playing Juggernaut in campaign, whether Black Tom was that face down encounter card or it was the Creeping Willow. So just be ready to deal with that Creeping Willow. Be ready to prioritize exposing him, and this scenario is actually quite easy. And I actually give this one a 3 for fun. I think this scenario is a real blast. Part of that is nostalgia, but I mean, I just really love Juggernaut. There's no randomness here to really mess you up, and I just really enjoy beating down Juggernaut, exposing him, confusing or stunning him, and yeah, it's just a really good time. So blind difficulty of 4 out of 5. Final difficulty though, just a 1, because at that point you know what you're doing, and you also should have gained 2 environments at this point, and are going to get a 3rd one in this scenario. Hope Summers helps a lot as well. That's Juggernaut. Next, we're going to look at Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister is another villain I give a 4 out of 5 on a blind playthrough. He does have some randomness at the beginning. It's going to put a superpower on him, and depending on what that is, you might have an easier or more difficult time with him. Also, his main schemes only have 5 threat threshold, and when those advance, you get another superpower. So he can be difficult for that. If you are not paying attention to that main, you are going to have a bad time. Now, I have paid attention to that main and still gotten another superpower. You saw that in my X23 run. But I think that really is the priority in this scenario. Just keep threat off the main, prevent it from advancing, and giving him more superpowers. This really extends to the push as well. When you push Mr. Sinister, he is going to add some threat to the main. Keep in mind also, he is going to start with this teleported away while you're playing campaign mode. So it's going to come in with 4, and the campaign setup is going to put more threat on there. So be aware of that. Also, big thing, it has a crisis icon, so you have to get rid of that quickly. It also has a forced interrupt. When he would attack, he schemes instead. It also has another fun bit of text. He cannot take damage. So even though you are trying really hard not to have that main advance, you must deal with teleported away immediately. Now, I am going to again give this a -3 difficulty. At this point, you have earned 3 environments, which are going to help you out. you have Hope Summers who is going to help you out. So you should be planning for this situation a little bit earlier in the campaign. And once you do that, Mr. Sinister is actually pretty easy. Even if he gets a second superpower, he can be pretty easy to defeat if you are paying attention to what's going on earlier than this scenario. You know, maybe you choose different campaign side schemes and environments than I do, but keep in mind that once you get to Mr. Sinister and Stryfe, you do have some pretty big threat walls to get through. The one in Stryfe is even bigger than this, so always be aware that, yeah, you have some priorities, keep threat off the main in this scenario, but you have to chew through teleported away first. Once you do that and you've planned and prepared for that, it is pretty easy. With all of that said, I do only give this one a 2 for fun. The reason there is, again, even when you're planning for this scenario, it can go wrong. You know, you're not always going to get the exact cards you want. And even if you have defeated teleported away, you still might lose a main and get another superpower on him. So, I do like that. I do like that aspect, but it's not fun to plan and then still lose really badly just because of the way some randomness affects the game. For me, anyway, that makes this a 2 out of fun for me. Now, we're going to go on to the final scenario in Next Evolution, Stryfe. I actually only give Stryfe a blind difficulty of 3 out of 5. If you thought the threat wall in Mr. Sinister was big, Stryfe's grasp is even bigger. It starts with 4, has a hinder 6, and campaign setup is going to put a few more on it as well. This is going to start with 14 if you don't have damage on Hope, and then you have a choice of giving Hope that damage again or putting that on this as additional threat. There's also a stipulation on this card. Hope can only attack Stryfe or thwart this scheme while it's in play. It has a response after Stryfe is defeated or the last threat is removed from this scheme. Flip this and reveal Living Bomb. Now, any threat that was on here is going to go on to Living Bomb, and Living Bomb also has a crisis icon. This has a victory 1, Stryfe cannot be defeated, which is kind of a big deal, and when revealed, you advance to 2A. Now, a couple things about that. Stryfe can't be defeated. When I'm playing this, I prefer to defeat Stryfe and get this advance to Living Bomb rather than clearing Stryfe's grasp and turning it into Living Bomb. Generally, I want to be damaging Stryfe and removing Thwart from here kind of at the same time so that there's not a whole lot of threat on Stryfe's grasp when we flip to Living Bomb. Once you defeat Living Bomb, Stryfe can then be defeated. His main scheme is interesting as well. He has you counting the common cards in your deck, and what that means is whatever card you have the most of is the common type. So if you have 3 events and 2 of something else, that common type is 3. So his scheme will go up by that amount while it's on 1B, and his attack is going to be affected by this as well. He gets plus X attack by this common amount. Once you go to 2B, it is a little bit different. That no longer goes up by the common amount. It's just his attack, which is getting boosted. The big thing, though, on 2B is you do get a bigger hand size of +2, but now everything costs 1 extra. And that's actually really easy to forget about. The first run through of this that I recorded for the channel, I actually had to redo this scenario like 4 or 5 times because I kept forgetting that everything cost 1 more. It was really frustrating. I actually didn't think I was ever going to finish that campaign. So you can forget about that. It is pretty easy to forget about. With all of this said, with all of this difficulty, you must, chew through that threat. I think you're able to do it fast enough because you do have 4 campaign side schemes which have turned into earned environments at this point. You do have Hope to help you. Now, she can only help you in this case by attacking Stryfe or thwarting off of this side scheme, but she's still going to be a big help. So I actually take this one all the way down to a 0 difficulty for that reason. There are just ways to do this without really worrying about main 1B. You should be able, even with 14 threat on Stryfe's Grasp, you should be able to get that down, defeat Stryfe, and do the push. I've only had one game where it was really close on 1B, and I mean, it still didn't end up advancing and losing me the game. So it can be a little bit difficult with that 14 threat, but you have so many things in your favor just leading into this scenario, or as the scenario begins, that it really is not that difficult. Now, he does do some things with psionic attachments, which can be interesting. When you start the game, you have to discard until you get a psionic attachment or a minion, and then on his push, you discard until you get a psionic attachment. I actually did that wrong in my latest playthrough with X23, and a subscriber pointed that out. On his push, it's not minion or psionic attachment, it's just the psionic attachment. It actually ended up being the same. I would have actually won a little bit earlier if Scrambler hadn't come out, but he surged into a psionic attachment, so in the end, it was okay. But I actually think Stryfe is a lot of fun. I really enjoy having a bigger hand size, even though hand size is going to hurt you in the long run against Stryfe. Having a fist of 7 cards on your turn is a real blast. And so what if they cost 1 more? You have resources to play those. You have more options, which is more important than individual cards, in my opinion. So that is Stryfe. As we see it right now, I give a total difficulty for this campaign 4 out of 10. It is the easiest campaign we actually have. But let's go just a little bit further. I want to talk about what the campaign structure adds for fun to this campaign. So the campaign fun is going to add to my total fun, and replay rating, of course, is a difference between fun and difficulty. Right now that's already a 9. Let's see if I can jump that up to a 10. I do have some extra factors here. I do have a -1 in this field for every scenario after the first one that I have given a 1 in fun. I don't have any of those, so that's a 0. I also have +1 here for every 4 or higher in scenario fun. Again, I don't have any. So it really just comes down to this highly variable and 100% subjective +X for fun added by the campaign structure, and I think it's a whole lot of fun. Giving you those choices about which campaign side schemes to go after to get the environments you want is a lot of fun. Even though you are getting those encounter cards, which are going to stay with you the entire campaign, it's a fun decision to make. You make the decision knowing that you're going to have an encounter card that could wreck your game. And that is a lot of fun for me. I talked a little bit about how a single random card can really mess you up in Mr. Sinister, and that can definitely happen in this campaign. But the campaign environments you earn, and having Hope Summers for 3 out of the 5 scenarios in this campaign really do make it a whole lot of fun. So my total fun for this campaign is 17. 17 minus my difficulty of 4 out of 10 is 13. But this replay rating is a rating out of 10. I give this campaign a 10 out of 10 for replay. Now that tracks because I have played it 20 times already, and I am going to play it more times. So that is how I score this campaign It's not super difficult once you know what's going on. It is difficult the first time. The first time I played it, I actually had a lot of difficulty with Mr. Sinister, and Stryfe was a little bit difficult. But after that first play, once you know what's going on, it's a really, really easy campaign. And for me, anyway, it is a whole lot of fun. So that's Next Evolution. Let me know in the comments what you think of this campaign. Let me know what your favorite hero has been to run through it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a marvelous day.